Hey, what's up guys? It's Luke and you're watching Luke the Gathering, and in this series of videos I'm cracking a pack at a time to see what I would draft. The first pack we ended up with a rare Loyal Warhound, and I ended up choosing it not even close to first, second, or third. I chose it fifth. Let's take a look at what's in this pack and we'll figure out which cards I pick to go first, second, third, fourth, and so on and so forth. Just as always, we're going to ditch the last two cards because those are our tokens and land, which we're not going to do. Let's take a look at the pack first, and then we're going to go card by card, put them in order of what I would draft. So we got a Herald of Hadar, Spoils of the Hunt, which was in the last pack. Same thing with Dueling Rapier and Bar the Gate and Half-Elf Monk and Hired Hexblade. Wow, Vampire Spawn. Collation. Maybe we're going to find out a little bit about Collation today as well. Here's something new. Devour Intellect. We got a Clattering Skeletons. Improvised Weaponry. Check for Traps. Lurking Roper. Trickster's Talisman. And the rare in this pack is the Forsworn Paladin. So interesting, we actually had a whole slew of cards that were the same as the last pack. Let's see where they will stack up. This time, let's go ahead, let's get overhead and see where we rank these cards and what we're going to pick first. Okay, let's put out the cards we got in this pack. Uncommons, we got Trickster's Talisman, Lurking Roper, Check for Traps, Improvised Weaponry, Clattering Skeletons, Devour Intellect, Vampire Spawn, Hired Hexblade, Half-Elf Monk, Bar the Gate, Dueling Rapier, Spoils of the Hunt, Herald of Hadar, and the rare was the Forsworn Paladin. Now, the Forsworn Paladin has Menace, and it's pay 1 life, create a treasure token. He doesn't have to tap or anything for that. It only costs 1. That's pretty good. He's at rare. It's a 1/1. It's a 1-drop. Having this guy in the first turn, like in your first hand, would be really nice, I think. Other cards I like Vampire Spawn. You guys know that. If I'm in green, I like Lurking Roper. I also like Improvised Weaponry. I think all of those are really, really nice. I'm putting a premium on black and red cards because those are the colors I'd like to be in, and there's lots of black in here, which is great. So let's move these out of the way, and let's see what we would pick. And this is really just like what I'm feeling at the moment. So, a lot of these cards we actually saw in the other pack. So, you know, there's probably some sort of collation thing going on here with the cards, or with the way Wizards does it, putting them into the packs. And if I pick, you know, a card in a different spot ahead of something else, it's just what I'm thinking at the moment. But hopefully they won't be too off. So what I'm thinking here is, if I had this pack as a draft pack, I think I would take Forsworn Paladin first. It has Menace, so, you know, if he's in there, if you're going first, you get Forsworn Paladin onto the board. He can just go in and do a damage. Even if they have their guy out there, he can come in and do another damage because of Menace. Also can make you a treasure token, which is kind of nice. And he can target creature can get +2/+0 until end of turn, target himself even. And it can also be used with Death Touch, or sorry, that second ability can be used with Treasure to make him have Death Touch, which makes him even better. So I think Forsworn Paladin's a good deal. He's not my favorite, and I feel like of all the 1-drops, he's okay. He's at rare. I mean, I guess I would take him. He's a good value. He has all this good text on a card. And I'm looking at the other cards here, and I don't see anything I'd rather really have. Though there are things that are close. So Forsworn Paladin is is the choice I'm gonna make. Second choice, I'm gonna pick the Lurking Roper. I think Lurking Roper in like a black, not a black, but like black green or white green, anything with life gain, where you can get him to untap. It only costs 2 and a green for a 4/5. That's a really nice value card, and it doesn't untap during the untap step, but whenever you gain life, Lurking Roper untaps. So there are quite a few cards in AFR that let you gain life, so I'm going to pick Lurking Roper as my number 2 pick. He might even eke out the spot before Forsworn Paladin, depending on where you're going. If you're in green, of course I take Lurking Roper first. Okay, coming up next, I think I'm going to have to go with the Vampire Spawn. I'm kind of debating between Vampire Spawn and Spoils of the Hunt. Vampire Spawn is really nice. Like I said in the other video, 2/3, that 3 defense is just so nice to have on him, and he's gaining you like a 4 life total swing, right? Because you gain 2 life and your opponent loses 2 life when the spawn hits the board. And it blocks a lot of those 2/2 for 2s, like the Hired Hexblade it would block really nicely. You know, the half-elf monk wouldn't really be attacking, but it could block that. There's a lot of 2-drops that it could block really well. And so Vampire Spawn is definitely, I think, my number 3 pick. Pick 4, I think we're gonna have to go with Spoils of the Hunt. Spoils of the Hunt is a green removal card. Very common sort of green removal where it's like you get to shoot the guy. It's an instant. It's gonna get rid of an opponent's creature, and then you can go in and attack. So it's always nice to be able to do that. And it's not even a fight. You just compare you just compare the damage to the power, or it says it deals damage equal to the power of the target. So like, you know, the Lurking Roper would do 4 damage to whatever it was. And it works well with Treasure. I don't know how many people are going to use it with Treasure to get the +1 on it. It could happen once in the blue moon. Okay, next up, I think in this group I would take Improvised Weaponry. Improvised Weaponry is 2 and a red. For a sorcery, I don't like that it's sorcery speed. When I have this card, I always feel like it's an instant, so I've made the mistake of saying, hey, I'm gonna play Improvised Weaponry as this instant, and it turns out I couldn't have played it, and oftentimes my opponent will gently remind me, hey, you can't play that, and I'm like, oh, sorry, and that happens. But it's really nice in that it deals 2, that like I said, there's a lot of 2-drops, a lot of creatures that have 2 toughness, and then it also creates a treasure token off the bat, so that is a great little thing. Next, I think I'm gonna go with the Herald. Herald of Adar, a little bit expensive. It's a 5-drop, and for 5 and a black, you can roll a d20, and it can make your opponent lose life. And in really nice cases, they would lose life, and you would gain life. And then if you get like a 20, you actually get 2 more treasure tokens, which is great. It's like you hit the jackpot. 4/4, a nice, I would say, mid-game sort of creature to have out, the Herald of Hadar. If you have him out in the mid-game, I think you're doing pretty well. Hitting for 4 and having 4 defenses is pretty key. Okay, next, if it were me, I would take Clattering Skeletons. Clattering Skeletons it has that 4 power, so it's gonna stand up to something like a Herald of Hadar. So it's gonna be able to like defeat that in combat. I would say this is like a pre-mid-game card, like post the beginning, but before the mid-game. It's good. It's kind of a narrow window, I suppose. But the 4 attack is really nice, and the 3 defense can be nice against 2-drops. If you can get him out early, he can bother your opponent, and when it dies, it ventures into the dungeon. So, there's a death trigger, which is pretty decent. I forget where I put Dueling Rapier and Half Elf Monk. I know they were in the last pack, but I'm going to put Half Elf Monk first. Like I said before, Half Elf Monk is great on defense with that 4 defense. Of course, you're not going to get Half Elf Monk out very early with it costing, 3 and a white. But, when it's out, it has Vigilance, so I guess if you attack with it, I don't know. I wouldn't attack with it too often unless it was equipped with some sort of equipment that boosted it, and which would make it a really nice attacker with good attack and a good defense, because it starts with good defense. But I think a lot of times most people are going to use the Stunning Strike ability to tap a target creature so they can't tap or do attacks or anything like that. I think that's what Half Elf Monk usually does in the games that I see. I think Dueling Rapier is next. Only costs 1 and instantly just goes right on a creature with the Flash ability. Creature gets +2/+0. And it can help you win a combat. I don't see a lot of ties often in combat. I mean, not what I mean is ties. I don't see it. Oftentimes it's straight up trade is what I really should say. I don't see where 2 creatures really live. Dueling Rapier could, in essence, help, but I don't know. Oftentimes that 2 extra damage is not going to do a whole lot unless you can really get it through to the player. But I do think it's a decent value, and especially in a deck dedicated to weapons, like with Brunor, obviously that's like the obvious choice. Dueling Rapier would be pretty amazing. Next, let's go with the Hired Hexblade. It's just a 2/2 for 2. We talked about Hired Hexblade before. I don't know, I might even trade Hired Hexblade with the Dueling Rapier. I feel like they're very interchangeable. If you use a treasure token to cast the Hired Hexblade, you can lose a life to draw a card, so that's okay. I don't see myself doing it that often. I'd rather use the treasure for other things rather than draw a card with the Hexblade and lose life at the same time. I'm just not too happy to play Hired Hexblade that often. Then we're gonna go to check for traps. It's 2 sorcery. And what you get to do here is you get to look at your opponent's hand, which is kind of nice, so you know what's coming at least. It's always important to know what's in your opponent's hand. I think that's really important to do. But what you get to do is you can choose a non-land card from it, and you can exile it. If an instant card or a card with flash is exiled, then they lose a life. So if you get rid of instants or cards with flash, that's really beneficial. But if you choose anything else, like a creature or a sorcery, then you're the one that loses a little bit of life. So there's a little bit of inherent risk in this card. This card, for me, generally doesn't make the cut. I've used it a few times in decks, but I think there are better options than this that you could possibly pick up, and it just kind of gets the short end of the stick a lot of times where I end up not using it. A card that I probably would use, if I were in this color, is the Trickster's Talisman. It's a 1-drop, and it only costs 2 to equip, and it gives a creature +1/+1. So that's nice. If it's on a flyer, it gives you that extra little damage. It could help you win against other creatures of comparable strength in battle. But the cool thing about this Trickster's thing is whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice the talisman, and if you do, create a token that's a copy of this creature. So that's a nice little trick. And for that, I think, if it wasn't in blue, it might be farther up the chain. But because blue is such a weak color in Dungeons & Dragons, it just doesn't kind of make the cut there, unfortunately. Kind of last here, I would put Bar the Gate here, sort of towards the end. Bar the Gate, again, we've talked about, it counters a target creature or planeswalker, which can be very, very powerful. But you just have to hold on to this card in your hand, and you have to save up mana in order for it to go off. And then you can go to the dungeon, which is nice, but it's 3 mana, and the speed at which this game goes, especially early, makes Bar the Gate a card that's hard to play. You probably want to get it starting in the mid-game, where you have most of the things you want out on the battlefield, and maybe if they play like a big bomb, then you could bar the gate, and that's a great use for it. But other than that, I don't see it being that great. Like, I would hate to use this on like a 2-drop, right? You wouldn't want to be like, oh, well, here's a higher text blade, bar the gate. That's not going to be very good. And the last card, Devour Intellect. It's only 1 black. Target opponent discards a card. If mana from a treasure was spent to cast this spell, instead that player reveals their hand, you choose a non-land card from it that player has and then discards the card. So it's kind of like Check for Traps a little bit. If you just use it for 1, your opponent discards 1, I mean, that could be okay. I hate discarding cards, but so in that case, it could be nice. They only have 1 card in their hand that they've been saving. You use this. Could make a big difference. Really, it could. I think it could. It's the sorcery speed card, but this card never makes the cut. I mean, it just, when you're only trying to get 40 cards with like maybe 23 creatures and other spells, Devour Intellect typically doesn't make it in. So overall, I think this pack is okay. I mean, there's some cards in it, definitely not the best. No bombs in this pack at all. Nothing that's like really jumps out at me. Even the rare, I picked this rare to be first. The Forsworn Paladin is first pick, but even I'm a little bit iffy on that. I could really exchange the Lurking Roper to be the first pick. Even maybe even the Spoils of War or Vampire Spawn. Like, what would you rather have, the Vampire Spawn or the Forsworn Paladin? I actually might even think the Vampire Spawn has more utility than Forsworn Paladin does. But the reason why I picked maybe Forsworn Paladin first is because I feel like I could possibly draft Vampire Spawns down the road, and I wouldn't be able to get another Forsworn Paladin since it's at rare. And it's a 1-drop, so that's super nice. I think anything in this top row is pretty decent. I wouldn't mind drafting any of that. The second row, these are sort of really iffy options for me. Like, I try not to draft too many Clattering Skeletons. I think having a couple, 1, maybe 2 in the deck is okay, but it's sort of in that mid-game where it's sort of, I don't know how it fits. And then we have the bottom row. Only 2 there on the bottom row in this particular review. Let me know what you think. Did I put these in the right order? Did I draft it in the right order? How would you have drafted this group of cards from this particular pack? I'm super interested to know. Let me know. And thanks for watching. We'll do another one real soon. I'll see you next time.